Hello, everybody. It's Dana Brooks of Facing Brooks Law Offices, and you are back with us for another episode of the EmPower Hour brought to you by the EmPower Plant. We are so excited today. I've got this guest that I have been so excited and turned on about since I met her several months ago in New Orleans. We've got Julia Metz, y'all. She is oh my goodness, just like a powerhouse trial lawyer. In fact, she teaches trial lawyers how to be powerhouse trial lawyers. So lots to learn from that. Get all your questions from watching all those TV shows and respond to us. We'll read them on, or you can reach out to us, text me, whatever. But you'll want to hear from her on everything. She's a very cool chick. She's a lawyer. She is a parent and an active parent. You know, one of these people who can seemingly do everything, which we're all trying to do, but she's pulling it off. So she'll give us the secret sauce on how to do that. So first of all, welcome, Julia, and then we'll go around and meet our panel who's joining us today. But welcome, Julia Metz, lawyer extraordinaire.
Hey, happy to be here today. So like I told you earlier, I apologize for this setup. I'm in a pediatric office in Advent Medical Center because this is the place I could found on my drive back up from Palm Beach to Pensacola, because we got stuck in traffic. So I think, Dana, you and I were talking about yesterday about making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
And so I had Gage with me and he was like, well, what are we going to do? Where are we going to do that? I was like, we're just going to find a spot. Like, we're just going to find solutions to some problems. That's all we're going to do today.
See, that's how great it is. You know, you're bringing this child around who's seeing you go, I can't get where I need to be. I got to be on this phone call. I need to find a place. Carrie Roan, this woman just walked right into a medical office and said, you got an office I can use? I need an hour to do a podcast. Do you love that? Carrie also
I love it.
has done
I mean, Julia, I'm such a fangirl from when I met you in New Orleans. I'm such a fangirl. I don't even want to talk. I just want to listen to you talk the whole time so I can like admire you. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying about doing right now is just what we all do. Like, you just gotta, you know, nowadays do a deposition from your car in the parking lot if that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're all doing. You know, we got to make it work. But women are so resilient and we're so able to do that. So I'm so proud of us to see us all doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad your child is seeing you do it.
Yeah.
Just, hey, I'm making it happen. This is happening.
Yes.
Betsy Brown is in the house.
Hey,
Betsy, my law partner. You also were at the Society of Women Trial Lawyers annual meeting in New Orleans, and you got to see Julia.
I did, and it's so great to see you again, Julia. Thanks for seeing our guest. I'm from Pensacola. I don't know if that's where you're originally from, but that's where I was born and raised. So I think it's cool that you work there now. So maybe we can chat about that later.
Yeah,
Dana also from Pensacola.
Yeah, you got some.
Oh, wow.
In the house. Yeah, we're both born and raised there.
So spoiler alert, I'm actually moving back to St. Pete.
Okay. Still Florida.
Still Florida. Yeah.
Oh.
Still doing lots of trial work with Trial School and Mass Torts Made Perfect and all of those things. But getting out of lower Alabama into, a diverse environment.
I do know.
Yeah, but we have to talk about where Julia's really from, because she's from my neck of the woods. You know, Julia, I don't know if you remember, but I'm from Fort Myers.
Carrie, we were trying to claim her, but okay, fine.
I get her.
Go
She's
on.
all mine. But yeah, you're from Houston, right? Which is like sugarcane country, you know, the Okeechobee. I mean, there's just nothing like it in the state of Florida. So
there's not. And, it's, when I think about growing up down there and things like that, it's a blessing and a curse, right? But you find all the blessings in it. Like, we learned incredible resiliency and grit, right? My father was a commercial fisherman. So I got my first boat when I was 8 or 9, and it was just like, hey, here's a VHF radio. We're going to call in and check on you in the morning to make sure you're still alive if you're out on the lake. So we would go camp on the lake and then just radio into the fish house in the morning. And so you just found ways to adapt and just be kids. I think that was the coolest part about it. The part about it that was really hard was that there was no one like me. There was no one who was openly gay. There was no one who was, and I was a little kid that they didn't know what to do with, right? They knew they liked me. They knew I had personality, but they didn't know what was wrong with me. Yeah, but they very much, so yeah. But I think the secret to life is number one, understanding that the people did to us or did with us the best that they thought that they could do in the moment. I've shared with you guys like my experiences with my mom about wanting me to conform. And that comes from a place as a woman of her wanting me to be safe, right? I just have no interest in safety anymore. Like we're gonna blow it up until the world is what we need it to be, you know, in a healthy way. But the things that she was afraid of happening to me, I understood why, because she was a woman who went through the world and things happened to her. And when we can find the lessons out of those and just kind of flip the scripts in our brains, we're unstoppable. Women are absolutely unstoppable. So.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here. I don't know if you know about the makeup of our firm, but we're good night, 11. I haven't done the math lately. We got a lot of women lawyers. we're 75% women owned, which is, you know, unheard of. But yeah, it's a great time to be alive. I want to ask you a couple of things. I want you to cover just a couple of things that I'm going to let you remember. I want you to tell us what mass torts are. And why that's important, why regulation alone doesn't keep people safe, and why we need people like you and people like us who hold people to account for the harm that they cause instead of just putting profits over people and safety. I want you to talk about that, but I want to ask you why you don't care about safety anymore, what informed that decision, and then I want to ask you how gender affects your life, professionally and personally.
Sure. So let's go first to mass torts. So the thing for me about mass torts, and this is, I was a prosecutor for 13, 14 years, right? So my entire, the first part of my career was about going after the bad guys, right? And making sure that we got justice. And that means, you know, sometimes no information is just as much justice as a life conviction. But going after the bad people for the right reasons. And I looked at plaintiffs' lawyers as like ambulance chasers, right? Because that's what the lobbyists tell us to do. That's what and when you grow up in farming communities, like we don't trust big money lawyers, right? You just don't, like with their fancy cars and those things. And I didn't have an appreciation for what was happening. And then I went back and started teaching at Stetson, and I started thinking really hard about being broad enough in my skill set to be able to reach students who wanted to go a civil track both ways, right? So plaintiff or defense or whatever they wanted to do. And then I started, you know, researching and thinking about it and looking at it. And to me, it was this idea that we have billion-dollar corporations that are not doing the things that they should be doing. And take opioids, for example, the DEA didn't stop them, right? The FDA didn't stop them. No governmental entity or body stopped them. Trial lawyers stopped them.
That's why you're not running around in an exploding Pinto anymore. You could think of ambulance chasing trial lawyer for that.
Right. And it's this, people have to start really thinking long and hard about these societal norms that we think about how we get ahead. And it's just been played upon us. So we don't look at the fact that in order to take down the opioid manufacturers or the massive, you know, Monsantos and Bayer and all of these gigantic corporations, that you have to have tremendous amounts of money.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to have attorneys willing to do this kind of work to hold them accountable, because the government simply isn't doing it, and they're not doing enough of it.
No.
So you have to have mass torts. And I think mass tort lawyers, you know, can do a better job. I think all lawyers can of not falling into the stereotypes. And number one, not being offended by the stereotypes. Like when I had friends tell me like, oh, like you're a traitor, you switch sides, like you're just chasing money now. I just asked them like, well, what about what I've done makes you think that my character's changed so much?
Right.
And they're like, oh, Julia, I'm just kidding. I'm like, no, because that's not a joke. That's not funny. Like, what makes you think that? So then we can have a broader conversation about why they have the preconceived notions that they do. And it's one person in one time in one moment, but it makes a difference, because that changes the conversation that they have with their children at home about lawyers.
Right.
So instead of being angry with people for feeling this way, I think we just take a minute, try to understand it, educate them when we can so that they'll educate their children, and we change the momentum around that. But you have to have mass tort lawyers coming together, pooling their resources to take down these giant corporations, because the government does not hold them accountable.
Exactly. You know, that's, you know, so many people think we're to the left and we're very liberal and we want huge, enormous government, things like that. And I'm like, well, if you're government, we're keeping you safe, I wouldn't have a job. So the regulations are not doing it. What they do is, well, I'm getting on a soapbox, it's a form of socialism because it's a lot of government jobs, give people a nice way to make a living. But anyway, Carrie, what did you think when you heard what Julia was saying about what your friends say about you're a traitor?
Well, it reminded me of like the first couple weeks at my office, because Julia, I did defense work for 16 years before I came here. And I know Betsy can chime in on this too, because Betsy, we recruited Betsy over from a defense firm too, but it, like, the way that people treated me was shocking.
They were awful.
Like I was, like I was doing something wrong, and I was like, are you kidding me? And it's not just it was the condescension and the looking down their nose at me like I'm just a filthy piece of, and I was just on their side like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, who do you think keeps you employed? Because if it wasn't for plaintiffs' lawyers, there would be no defense bar. So you're looking down at me like we're in a symbiotic.
You would be doing loan closing, sir. You would be
right. And
bills, sir.
And Dana told me real quick, and Dana's like, you just can't sweat what they're thinking about you. You cannot sweat it. You're going to be so successful. You're going to be so happy in your job that you're fulfilled and you're helping people. And that happened almost immediately. So, and I hope that Betsy's kind of going through that same transition where she feels personally fulfilled by helping people, because that overcomes and overshadows anybody looking down their nose at me anymore. It really does.
Yeah. Betsy, what do you think about that?
Well, Dana, you and I were just talking about this, how I got a really sweet note from a client, and I shared it with Dana, and I was like, this warms my cold, dead lawyer heart. Because it was a message of thank you for looking out for me. Thanks for helping me come back stronger. I really appreciate you type thing. And I never got that before, that's for sure. But
what, you didn't get that in the defense side?
Believe it or not, it's like the better I did my job, the worse they treated me.
Yeah, the more they cut your bills, the more trials you win, the more they cut off your bills.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, I do get that feeling. I get that sense from some people, but I will say that by and large, folks have been supportive of me, even my former defense colleagues. So it hasn't been too bad.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. All right, Julia, let's get to our second question, which is, why do you disregard safety now?
Because it's not safe.
It's the illusion of safety you disregard.
It is, right? And we conform out of habit, and we seek safety in a way that creates like habits of avoidance and things like that. And we lose ourselves in the process, right? So and when we lose ourselves in the process, we don't function well, and I think anytime that we are walking in line with our values and our calling, then it makes our decision-making very easy, and we find great comfort in that. So I'm no longer interested in the safety of societal norms. I'm just not.
Yeah.
And I think societal norms kill people. It breeds silence. Look at the number of sexual assault victims who don't say anything at all. Like, I mean, I did the podcast with Luke back in November. It was released, I think like last week. And then the number of people who heard it and then immediately reached out to me and said, I didn't know it had happened to you. And these are people who are older than I am. And they were like, well, who was it? And I'm like, here are the names, right? They're like, oh my God, it was the same people. And I think just realizing, like, when we conform to societal norms, sometimes we are playing it safe for the abusers. We are playing it safe for the patriarchy. We are playing it safe for the people in power. Yeah. When we walk in the path of our calling and we say, I seek safety in me and walking in line with my values and not in making you feel comfortable, it's just so freeing. Like, I don't need your approval on how I wear my hair. I don't need your approval on, I had a judge keep telling me one time I needed to wear lapel pins because a brooch, like women wear brooches. And I was like, well, you won't let me wear one that says guilty, so I'm not wearing it.
Since you've been alive, brooches have been hip, have they?
Right. I mean, that's what he said.
No brooch, mister. No brooch, master. That's not true.
You wanted to wear
bad information, judge.
Yeah, he wanted me to wear a brooch in trial, and I said, if you'll let me wear one that says guilty, I'll do it. Right?
And
so
can I come borrow some of your brooches?
Brooch. Who is this clown? A fucking brooch. Okay. I do want to ask you a couple of things.
Sure.
Okay, we cross promote here, and I was telling you, I saw you at a conference, and you came on. It was a Sunday morning, and you were the first one, and I'm like, we are in church. This chick brought it. It was awesome. And Sarah Williams, one of our colleagues out of Birmingham, Shannara firm, she came after you, and I'm like, okay, girl. She brought it. And then I was like, oh my God, this is the best conference I've ever been to in my life. I mean, it was just such a wonderful thing. But I listened to your podcast. We have someone who's in our orbit, all of us personal injury lawyers. He's very well respected, Luke Russell. And
love him.
Fantastic podcast called Lawfully Good. And you were, I think, the first guest of his 3rd season. And I've listened to your podcast, and I know Betsy's caught it. Greg, our producer's caught it. And man, it was good. Now he puts 40 hours of editing into his, and we're doing this on the fly. So need you to work some magic here, lady. But no, you were just so fantastic. But you talked about some things that are deeply personal and really kind of exposed you, opened you up. And whenever I talked to you about what I wanted to cover here today, I said, lady, oh my God, we could take any one of those 10 segments and spend an hour on it. So let's do you, whatever you want to talk about. And I was so surprised that your response today was that, talking to Luke's the first time I even talked about some of that stuff. Yeah. When I went to New Orleans, that was only the 2nd time. And I'm sitting here and my, bleach blonde head just blew off. Say more about that. What in the world made you just say, okay, I got a microphone in my hand, and who knows who in the universe is going to hear this, but I'm going to tell this story for the first time. What's your story? How did you tell
it? How we got there with Luke was, I was tired. I think emotionally and soulfully exhausted with this idea of, people keep thinking women can do everything, and we can be everything to everyone, and we can do, and they can just keep piling on us, and we're supposed to just keep putting up with it. And so part of talking to Luke about everything that had happened for me was so that the generation coming behind us and the other women who are trying to appease everyone and killing themselves in the process can stop, right? A little bit. And that they know that the things that have happened to us, we didn't choose, but we do get to decide what we do with them. And I am adamant about, trying to save lives. I believe tremendously that, especially for the LGBTQ community and people of color and any minority, the loneliness that we all feel sometimes, and the targeted attacks and things like that. If we don't talk about it, then who's going to? And I just remember I've done a lot of volunteer work over the years, and I've worked with a lot of kids, and they kept saying, you made a difference to me, right? I'll get a letter in the mail 5 years later. Like, I remember you from this field trip that you chaperoned this one time. And talking to Luke, it just felt right. It felt like, okay, right? So let's talk about how I got to where I am, and why people, why my confidence level is where it is, and why I advocate for others to find their voice as well.
Now, that was the first time maybe you shared that very deeply personal story about losing someone so close to you. But something tells me you've lived who you are, you've lived your truth for a while now. Am I wrong in that? And just tell me about your journey of how you decided Julia Metz is just fine the way she is.
That's a great title of a book, isn't it?
Julia Metz is just fine the way she is, right?
Yeah. Well, I love you talked about that a little bit in New Orleans, but like with your childhood and your mom. And I just found that so profound that you knew at a very early age who you were and how you wanted to be.
I knew elementary school. Like there was never a doubt in my mind, like this. I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm not attracted. Like no. Like I'm not going to have a husband. And I remember even because I wasn't really, really maternal. I remember giving my mom a card one time that said like the best you're going to get is grand dogs, because I'm not having kids. So like I always knew that I was different. I felt different. And here's the thing where I could have done it better for myself, and that I was very good at shifting back and forth between personalities. I knew who I needed to be in the moment to get what I needed out of that room. And there were times that I did it for my own gain, but then there were also times that I did it just so I felt safe, so I could control the room a little bit, right? So if I'm going to go in, I'm going to be funny. Like, I am naturally an introverted human being. So if I am controlling the conversation in the room, it's because I don't feel safe. And I need to dictate where this goes. I need to control where this goes, right? But my journey in being fully who I am was, it happened sometime after Julie died. Because
is, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Julie was my very first partner ever. We met while we were in college at Mississippi College. She was 2 years older than I am, smartest human I've ever met, kindest human I've ever met, right? So she's the Sunday school teacher type. And at that point I was probably like a little chippish on my shoulder, right? Yeah. My whole goal in life was to conquer people and to crush their little spirits. And here comes this, like, my mom used to, at that time, she would call me on the phone. She was like, am I talking to Julia today or Jerry? Because I do not want to talk to your father. so, and he was an airborne ranger, right? So it was, I just thought that this is what we do. Like, we crush and we win, and we crush and we win. And then I meet Julie, and I'm like, we don't, right? Like, we love humans, and we are gentle, and we are kind. And it was just such an incredible transformation, and it renewed my faith in Christ and in my ability to be a gay Christian, because she walked her faith so well. I didn't have to ask what she believed, she lived it. And so we were together for 10 years, but never openly together, right? We're classic Southern Baptist roommates. And I remember, so she struggled so much with it. There were times that at night I would sleep on the floor next to her bed, holding her hand, because she couldn't handle the shame of us being in the same bed, right? And so it would come in waves of when she could and when she couldn't. And then things like, I got custody of my niece and nephew, and we were raising them together, and lots of things kind of just happened. And her depression got worse and worse and worse, and ultimately resulted in suicide. And one of the struggles going through that was that, she's like, I'm going to tell my family that I'm not gay. I just love you, and I can't lose you. So they have to accept that. And I was like, no, because that's not true. And I told her, I remember one of our last conversations, I was like, it's better to lose me than lose you, right? Like, don't compromise on this. Like, if this is who you are, like, don't, like, you are loved and God loves you and everyone loves you, like, you're Julie. And that was that. And I remember reassuring her, if it's meant to be, I'll be here, and we will always find each other. But, like, this isn't healthy right now. And within, like, maybe less than a week of that conversation, she was dead. Oh. So after that, I just began living more openly, right? I never asked permission. Like, I didn't tell my parents I was gay. I just brought a girl home. I'm like, hate it or love it, Lois, here we go. Right, like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, my dad's response was classic male response. They're all attractive and educated and smart women. So he's like, way to go, little Mets. Wait, I'm like, you're such an ass. So right. Like, it's
I
like,
love that though. Way to go, little Mets.
Right. Makes the gay chauvinist. So that was,
identify women together, my dream.
Exactly. Thanks. But there wasn't, and I started living more openly without asking for permission or caring about what people thought, right? But the woman that I was with at the time had political ambitions, wanted to be a judge and things like that, and was very much less comfortable being open. And that's one of the things that we disagreed on tremendously, because we lived in a small town, and I just remember thinking about all the kids out there who needed to see that powerful women could be gay, right? Or powerful men could be gay and be families and be okay. And you don't have to shame yourselves to death. Like, shame and silence drives us to suicide. And I just wanted to do whatever I could to stop that. So I started living much more openly and much more honestly.
How long ago did you lose Julie?
So June 25th, 2010.
Still very fresh for you. I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much so, right? And I don't run from it. I'm good with it. When you have the opportunity to spend time with someone as incredible as I've had the opportunity to spend time with those types of people, it's just like, I miss her tremendously. I sometimes am almost happy that she's not in this world currently where we are. But I wouldn't trade the experience. I mean,
That's lovely. That's a very lovely way to think about that. Betsy, I want to come back to you before I go back for my last wrap up, which is I want to know how gender impacts, how Julia allows gender to impact her life, how she experiences it. But I don't want to hog all the time. What do you think?
Well, it just really resonated with me with Julia talking about how representation matters, because it absolutely does. Mm-hmm. And so that, that was a fight worth fighting, because you did provide that representation, and that was something worth standing up for. So kids who come up in small towns and in the South and religious communities can see it's not just me, there's not something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I think of is privilege. Whatever you were describing, some of that just now, I thought to myself, I don't ever have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to hide who I am. I don't have to wonder about, what somebody thinks about what I look like or my clothing choices or who I hang out with. I don't have to maintain some sort of, fraud about who my roommate is and that sort of thing. So many of us enjoy privileges like that we just don't ever stop and think about. And I like to do that.
The biggest one for me there, Dana, was the privilege of grief. I didn't get to grieve what should have been my wife.
You're right. Obviously.
I had to bury a friend, and I had to ask permission to go in the hospital to see her because we weren't together, and they don't have to let me back, right? So like, luckily I'm likable, I guess, right? And they let me back. And we would carry notes in our pockets or our wallets or, whatever was on us with the others identifying information, so that if something happened, we could tell them to look here. It tells you that I'm allowed to come back and see her. But I would have so many people come up to me and be like, "Oh, you lost your best friend." And I'm like, "You have no idea. You have no idea what I've lost." Right. So I didn't just miss the opportunity to have a full and honest experience, but I also missed the opportunity to grieve her for what she was to me. Yeah. Right. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so important to me, that when I talk about like loving when it's hard, it's because that's one of the things that she taught me to do. And about seeing the best in people and in their motives and in their intentions, to keep ourselves, more honest and more hopeful. But not being able to grieve her the way that I wanted to, or felt like I needed to, has, again, you turn it into a positive, and that's cool, because I'm just going to keep her alive, right? I'm going to keep her alive by doing all these things.
You never get the closure you're entitled to, so it kind of keeps it alive. So I guess in some way that's, a universal correction. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for something to make sense from that. I tell you what's hurtful though, is just hearing how much shame impacted her life. And how much we give control of our happiness and what we genuinely believe about ourselves to anybody other than ourselves. It doesn't make any sense. And I know, because someone raises you and gives birth to you, and you come from families of origin, and you're taught certain beliefs, you would have a certain, discontent about rejecting those beliefs or going in a different direction. But that's different than just shame. Shame for no other reason than to just make you feel like shit about just who you are, not choices that you've made, just who you are and what you genuinely feel and believe about yourself and the world around you. I just fucking hate shame.
Yeah, and they're good reason though, right? I mean, look at what we do to women. And right, so we talked about it earlier, whenever you started, it was like the ability to balance work and mom life and all those things, because if we don't, and we don't look like we're doing it all, they're going to shame us to death anyway.
Shit
And
moms
then
or shit wives or shit
yeah. And then it's taught us to shame ourselves. And I'm just like, no, like I'm not interested in beating myself up any more than I already have my entire life. Right. Like, no, I'm interested in beating you back now.
Yeah. What do you get for it? What do you get for constantly failing to meet other people's expectations? I just don't get how that enriches your life. But women, especially, we do it all the time. I think a lot of people do, but especially women. But that kind of brings you back to the gender question. But I want to circle back, Carrie, now that we're talking and thoughts, what would you like to talk to Julia about or hear from her on?
Well, so I have a question, and I don't mean to go and step over the line, but so, the country's changed so much in the past maybe 8 years, maybe starting with the Tea Party, kind of getting very, very right Christian wing, and it's really shifted, right? And so it's interesting to hear that you can still combine Christianity with being gay, because to me, it seems like, and I grew up Catholic, so I went to Catholic school my whole life in Fort Myers and was raised with a lot of traditions and all, but I was never raised to not love somebody and not treat them with kindness and respect and allow people to be who they are. But I've seen a lot of change in the country over the past 8 or 9 years, 10 years maybe, and with a lot of, like I said, with a lot of extreme right wing, a lot of extreme Christianity beliefs. So I'm wondering, like, how you found a comfortable place in Christianity where you don't feel judged, or you feel comfortable, or you feel safe, or that's kind of a garbled question, but I hope you get my drift.
Yeah.
I do, right? And I think it's recognizing that number one, like your faith is a personal relationship with your maker, right? So I'm not going to allow the, ultra conservative Southern Baptist church down the road to tell me about my relationship with God, right? Because they're doing the same thing everybody else is doing. They're interpreting scripture that's been interpreted in 45 different languages at different times by different people. It's literature. It's interpretive, right? And they're wanting to tell me what to think about it. I'm like, well, did you actually read it in Hebrew? Because if you didn't, oh man, I don't know that we need to chat. So I don't
seem prepared for this meeting.
Right. So number one, I am not going to let the church and especially people who are not walking in alignment with their faith and values as they should be, to tell me what my relationship with my maker is. I will not give them that power anymore. I did it for a long time. Julie did it for a long time. Others have done it for a long time, and we end up tormenting ourselves and traumatized. And I'm just not, like, this is a personal relationship. And then I will find and seek community that support me. And what I mean by support me is not like, hey, go do whatever you want in life and it'll be great. But people who are loving and kind, and also hold us accountable for the times that we're stepping outside of our values. Like, hey, Julia, you're a super great person, but you are intense today and pretty much an ass. So maybe chill it a little bit,
We all need those people.
Finding that community. And for me, it's been the Methodist Church, right? And I know that they're split, and everything that they're going through is hard right now. But I found that to be, and it was Adam Hamilton's teachings and writings. And then when COVID hit, his church was online, so I could tune in and watch. And it was kind of like a reconnection for me after a very long time of being frustrated and angry with religion, because people weaponize religion against others. And it's not just like the LGBTQ community, it's against women, right? How many churches have scandals where the women have been abused and beat and hurt, and they're telling them to stay? The sexual abuse that they're covering up, right? The Southern Baptist Convention, and those churches and things like that being formed to combat Blacks coming in, right? Like ways to stop integration. So I don't look to the church the way that we all think of it to restore my relationship with God. I look to church, like-minded people, for community, but I work on my relationship personally.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. I know that's a highly personal kind of question, but I was just interested in that. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
Julia, whenever I hear you speak, this phrase comes to mind. This woman has done her work. We hear that all the time. do your work. I don't know if Brene Brown started that, but you talk about, oh, well, you know, you got to do your work. Well, they've done a lot of work. They've done their work. You personify that term. You seem very self-effacing is the way I would describe it. And I think you've talked a couple of times about the power of just saying something out loud. And I want to get into that a little bit more, like just the power of getting something outside of you. So many things that make us anxious are the things that our internal dialogue is telling us, Dana, you need to do this. You didn't do this. You got to do this. Dana, you need to do it. They're counting on you. This didn't happen. Da, da, da. And then, or you let this person down. You should have done this. You should have stayed. You should have done this. You should, whatever. And then if you ever actually just say that out loud, and it could literally be something as casual as saying it to your friends out on the boat, at a cocktail party, just actually saying something out loud, it releases the power those thoughts and those words have over you and how you live your day. You look to me like somebody who embodies that.
It's a work in progress every day.
Yeah. But you're courageous.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I want to talk about gender.
Hang on, Dana, before you say that, you know what I like about your courage though, is you're courageous, not just in your strength, but in your emotions. I mean, you're one of the most compelling, strongest women that I've seen speak and storytell and litigate. And, you know, you're also very free and courageous with your emotions, which I think is very impactful and compelling as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something else about that, Carrie, don't you agree? You could be distracting in a way that Carrie and I can also be distracting. Because we kind of look like ornaments sometimes. There's a lot of flash and hair and you know, material.
Yeah.
Height.
And I just blend into the background.
No. Bitch, look at the lashes, please. Get a close up. Get a close up. She's ready for her close up, Mr. DeMille.
The blue eyes and the lashes. We are not fooled by you.
Don't start with me. Don't start with me. Pensacola. That's that Pensacola sly. They act reliable. We're cocky as hell. No. Yeah. I mean, I forgot what we were going because we were talking about her mesmerizing green eyes.
You were going to go into gender. You were going to ask about gender.
I wanted to ask about gender. I wanted to ask your experience because in my view, I ask people to not make it relevant if it's not relevant. And there's so many things that we go through our lives believing are gender relevant that are not. They are not. I use an example in my book about drinking. If you look at drinking among women, it's through the roof. And I do believe that has to do with stress. People drink to lighten their load, to be a little less stressed. There's nothing gender based about that. We just assumed that men needed to drink when they came home in a peaceful, quiet home with the kids bathed and put it, you know, whatever. So you come home, have a couple minutes, don't talk to him, let him read his paper, let him have a cocktail, whatever. And then just, you know, how was your day, darling? And it's because of how we envision stress and responsibility. And then now we know in reality, women have got a lot on their plates other than, you know, bake sale, getting kids cleaned up, you know, making sure their permission slips are signed, stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that when you look at most families and most gender role responsibilities, you'll see women doing a lot of things that were traditionally male, but they're also doing the same things that have always been traditionally female. So that's one of those things that we always think gender is related to stress or drinking. No, it's not. It's not. It's everybody has stress. Everybody wants to relieve it. So I ask people all the time, especially women, I said, if you have one of these clickers, you know, you can go around and click every time you saw something, click how many times you show deference to a man for no other reason than his gender. No other reason than you know that guy, if I don't make a big deal out of him holding the door for me, he's going to think I'm a dick. Or this guy who is so surprised that you can be, you know, smart and funny and pretty and be, you know, all those kinds of things we do all day long where we're like, oh, don't ever emasculate a man. Don't ever speak over him, you know, show him this deference. I do it. And I consider myself pretty woke from a feminist perspective, but I know that I do it. But I want to know how you particularly do it, because when you show up and you give your presentation, you don't try to put on what we want women to look like as your presentation. You show up as you, and everybody can focus on what you have to say. That's a superpower. So let's talk about gender.
Yeah, gender is wild. I think the hardest thing for women in general is, I don't know that it's overcoming. It's what we've been conditioned to do. Life is a habit, right? And our habit is that we praise the men who are providing for us because that's what our fathers did. That's what their fathers did. And so we're just in this habit of building men up and not building ourselves up because we didn't, right? Women who talked about what they did were braggadocious, or they were like, there was just something wrong with them. So we just flip the script and make a new habit, right? So my habit is I'm not going to build someone up who's not going to build me up, right? Unless I'm playing a game. And I know that going in, right? Like if I want to see like, all right, how big can I make him smile today if I kiss his ass? So, right. But I know going into that, I'm doing this to have fun for me. Right. And I just want to see how narcissistic he is today. Right. But I don't do it for any other reason. I will though do it when it's
a trick. It's a tool you have.
Let me tell you, OMara is the only man who has ever asked me what my preferred pronouns are. And he did it like not that long ago, right? We were just having a conversation and he says, hey, he says, I just want to stop. I want to be respectful. What pronouns do you prefer? Right. And that was just a moment for me. I was like, whoa, who are you? Right.
Well, tell people who he is now. I mean, he's an important lawyer.
Wow.
Tell him what he's famous for.
OMara is an absolutely phenomenal trial attorney in Orlando. The George Zimmerman case, I mean, countless other cases. I stalk him like a fan because I am a fan. But for him to be, so human and so real. And the reason I give that example is because he is someone that I have no problem being respectful and praising it because he's a genuine human being. So I don't think it should be like women versus men about, I'm not going to give you this or give you that. No, it's about souls. Yeah. If you got a good soul and I got a good soul, we're going to vibe.
Yeah.
If I got a good soul and you have a soul that makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm going to be on guard and you're going to get what you get and you better just deal with it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about honoring myself where I feel safe. And if I don't feel safe in a place, I'm not going to be there long.
Yeah.
And when it comes to gender and things like that, one of the things that I would say, be careful with, we're constantly asked, bring somebody to the table, help us get the women numbers up, help us do this. And I responded one time, I said, I don't invite people to places where they're not going to be safe. I don't ask my friends to come to places. So change your culture and I'll invite them.
Thank you.
Otherwise I'm not doing it.
I don't want to call anybody out, but there's organizations that I've been involved in the past that will offer women's caucuses. And to me, that's like the kid table at Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you get your own little place and we'll have cooking shows for you. And maybe we'll have jewelry and some fashion in the lobby outside of your CLE. We'll have a makeup person go there or whatever, which don't misunderstand me. Clearly, I avail myself of things like that. But to assume that is a priority item or that I need to hear about it when I'm in a professional conference is insulting to me.
Yeah.
I've commented on that with several of them. But to me, I always ask myself, what do you get for it? So when I find myself sustaining these cultural norms, so I'm like, what do I get for it? Because it's not serving me. If it's not serving you, then it's not my job to not, to make sure you're not uncomfortable. So that's just the way I look at that.
The more we practice that, the better we are. And we were talking about that this morning at the annual conference in Palm Beach, and is that the over apologizing for everything. And I'm like, stop. It's a habit. So tell your friends, like, hey, I'm a person who over apologizes. So every time I'm saying I'm sorry and I shouldn't, raise your hand. I'll go back and I'll redo the sentence. I'm just going to break the habit. Right. But get your family and your friends involved. And then when you write your emails, if you lead with it, take it out. Just little things that we can do to correct our language to empower ourselves. And every single day that we do something like that to show up for ourselves, then we build up to the courage to have those moments where somebody tells the inappropriate joke and we can say, hey, what did you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because courage is a habit. And the more we practice showing up for ourselves and for others, the more courageous we get as we go through it.
You're 100%.
I think those are great things to practice. And tricky thing about gender to me is that when we allow ourselves to be defined by societal norms and by people's expectations, then we measure ourselves by how we meet those norms and expectations. And that breeds perfectionism in a way that's so unhealthy, right? So if I were to measure myself by societal norms of a mom, like, I don't listen, no. I tell the kids in my house, we are a unit and we are a team. That means, like, Justin, you're on dishes, Gage, you're on trash, somebody's mowing the lawn, right? I got to work. We need to get this together. If you want me to cook dinner, that means y'all need to do the laundry because I'm not doing both.
Right.
Like that's just like, those are the real conversations. I mean, I'm not at my house trying to do all of it all the time. So, just redefining those roles and what makes sense for us, and stop trying to meet other people's expectations, right? If you're the parent who wants to craft with your kids, then craft. But if you're the parent who wants to take them and show them your corner office where you're a badass, like, lawyer, then take them and do that and buy cookies from Publix, right?
Exactly.
That's 100%.
But pick your perfect. The reason we go wrong with, trying to be perfect and chasing, gender issues and things like that is because we're trying to measure ourselves by societal norms instead of picking the things that matter to us.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. You've got to understand that it's your position. Mm-hmm. You get to choose what perfectionism is, because so many of us chase perfectionism by other definitions. And then when we achieve it, it's not gratifying.
Right.
And you're not appreciated like you thought you would be. Mm-hmm. You're like, look, bitch, I perform miracles here. I've got 18,000 balls in the air. These kids are doing good. They're not embarrassing the family. They're in school. I'm balling. I'm doing these things at work. I'm winning trials. You're doing great. Nobody's, wearing dirty clothes. I got this, and then they're just take it for granted and just like, oh, this is your job. This is what you do, whatever. And you're like, well, I'm killing myself to do something. You've got to stop doing that. It's not rational. I always tell people all the time, if you could just be a rational person instead of an emotional person, because there's nothing rational about, continuing to be on this treadmill and chasing this thing that is not gratifying to you. You don't even value it.
Yeah. And
you don't even value it.
With our careers, right? Like, there's always going to be somebody with more money. There's always going to be somebody trying a bigger case or a different something, or it's in the news longer, or you have to get very serious about, like, what do you want out of your career? Yeah. Do I want to win the most trials or try the biggest cases or do, if you want that, then great, do that. Align your life and your values to go after that. Perfect. Right. But then don't say that the thing that you want more than anything is to be a stay-at-home mom, because, like, that's not true. And there's nothing wrong with, I want to have kids and a family, but I also want to chase this thing over here. 100%. Everything has seasons and times. And if we're honest about what we want, then I think it makes all the difference in the world. If you asked me what I was, 5 years ago, I would have said a trial lawyer. If you asked me what I am today, I'm a mom, right? I've got people who need love and support, and it's just where I am. If you ask me next year, it may be different, right? But just embrace the seasons.
It's funny because I just came back from Belize. I go to this women's retreat, and one of our and we're all kind of about the same age. And our task right now is to decide, what do we want to experiment with and what do we want to experience in the next season of our lives. And that sounds very simple. But when you think about it and you realize, okay, I'm freeing myself to take some chances to have a life I never even envisioned. That's the experiment part. Experience is, what do I want to actually go through? Because I'm the person I am now because of all the experiences I've had. Mm-hmm. Fantastic person, because I've gone through all these kinds of things that's going to make me better. So it's just going into your life, the future, the unknown, with an idea that this is going to be something that enriches me, that I learn from, that is going to make my life better, and I'm liberated and free to take chances. You embody that sort of mentality to me. And I was just so excited that you agreed to be our guest, and I want you to come back stronger, but that's another discussion for our producer.
Yeah, for sure.
Offline.
So in all honesty, though, the things that make me good at what I do also make me not a great partner at times, right? So because I am so very independent, and I want things done the way that I want them done, because I've gone through all these things, I've done the work, I've done what I needed to do. This is just what we need to do. Mm-hmm. So I have to check myself, right? And I have to think about how I want to build trust with my partner in allowing her to make decisions that I would ordinarily want to make, or think that I should make, or things that I want to control. Because when things are not the way that they should be in my mind, then if I'm not careful, I revert back to thinking, okay, this is the chaos from my childhood, right? This is the trauma from life. So they're just things, even when we look like we have it all together, it's only because we're doing the work every day. And I want people to understand that. Like, it's not like you do the work and then you're just empowered and like gravy train. It's you do the work and you're empowered and you keep it up. It's like working out and exercising. If you don't maintain it, you lose it.
Yeah, you can't. You can't just exercise a lot for a week and bank it for 3 months. It's not how it works.
Right.
Yeah. Betsy, we're going to do our last little go around before we close today. There's so many things we can cover, but just get in this conversation. What do you think and what do you want to hear about?
Well, I was just reflecting on the thoughts about Julie and the conversation about Julie, and I thought about when she passed in 2010 and how far things have come in terms of LGBTQ rights and abilities to live as a family and have that be recognized, and Pride Month and all these other things. Do you ever think back on, how she might feel if she were here now? Would she feel differently, or was it just so deep within her?
So I had really hopeful up until the last 2 years. Prior to that, I looked back and I was like, wow, like if she had only lived to see this part, right? Like, how cool would it be? And you have to recognize, so like at this point, I have a partner, and she's also an attorney. So I see it through the lens of, I don't allow myself to fantasize about a relationship that doesn't exist anymore. Right. But I do allow myself to think about, because when I think about Julie, what I think about is that the world is missing her presence, not that I am missing my partner, because I have a partner. And it's very important to keep that separate. I miss her presence and the gift of just like unconditional love to people in general. And so I do sometimes, I mourn for the world, and that, kids who are in school don't have her as a teacher. Yeah. And things like that. And I had, up until about 2 years ago, felt like, wow, if she were here, like this would feel so liberating to her, and maybe it would give her the courage to live authentically. But then with the, things happening in Florida and in Texas and around the country, when you have, 31 people attending a pride parade for no other reason other than to cause injury and riot, and when you have pastors preaching online about how people of the LGBTQ community should be killed and put to death, right? Because of that's their belief. And when you have, we have a 10-year-old now, so we can't talk about the fact that there are 2 women raising him at school potentially, right? With the legislation in Florida. So I feel like we're under constant attack for being seen and being valued, which then makes me want to double down and be seen even more, because like, cool, take it. Tell them that they can't talk about it in school, right? They're going to talk about it anyway. They're going to do it anyway, right? Tell us that we can't marry or we can't do this. We're going to do it anyway. Like, we're not going to stop. Right. But it makes you a little angry and defiant. So short answer, yes, I had thought that things were better. And then recently, very sad about the hate in people.
Same here.
Yeah, me too.
I just think to myself, I thought we were so far beyond this.
Me too. Yes. We had made so much progress. Yeah, we were doing so well. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm not in a fugue state, but I'm not like burning down the house. I'm like, okay, I've got to stay calm. Mm-hmm. I've got to look at the resources. I've got to, react intelligently and calmly to this threat. I can't, rioting in the streets, just not getting anybody anywhere. We've got to do some other things, but I get what you're saying. It just feels like, we were going so great, and then all of a sudden it's like, where the hell are we? What the hell just happened here? And it's hard, and it's hard not to retreat and just say, well, I'm okay. I got money. My kid will have anything she needs. It's real easy to enjoy that privilege that you have worked so hard to earn, even though you don't have as much as others do. but you are a
Yeah.
brilliant person, and you have a mastery of something that can level any playing field in this country, and that's the law. So you use that masterfully. Carrie, let's finish up with you and your final questions and comments for our guest, Julia Metz, today.
All right, well, Julia, I want to switch gears with you real quick. You're such an impressive trial lawyer, and you're such an even more impressive storyteller. So my question for you really is, where do you learn how to be such a good storyteller? Is there somewhere that, are there books people watching can read, or that we can read? Like, you know, as trial lawyers, we're always trying to be better storytellers, and you're one of the best. So what are your like top 3 recommendations with respect to how to become the best storyteller?
Well, if you're friends with Dana and you're listening to this, just call me and I'll teach you, right? Like, how about that? Step 1. Step 2 is to be common sense. Think about it, right? We can't learn to tell stories by reading books, right? We have to learn to tell stories by telling stories. And I think the best way to do that is kids, right? Show up to elementary schools and read to them, and then identify the characters in different voices, right? So practice inflection and practice emotion and practice pauses with an audience that's going to love you if you snot all over yourself. You're going to be like, oh, that must have been on purpose. So you're going to get nothing but positive feedback for your storytelling. So you're first going to develop the skill of just being comfortable with playing with voices, comfortable with playing with tones and tempos and facial expressions and things like that. Then once you have some comfort with that, then we bring it back, we plug it into some skills. And that's just organization and structure. How do I tell the story in the most compelling way? Do I need to do a flashback? Do I need to do chronological so that the jury follows along? Do I need to do chronological with logical buckets so they know where to put the information, right? So once I know how to tell a story, then I just need to give the story some structure. But again, I think the easiest thing to do is to start by reading books to kids and playing with being alive in a story, because when you're in a trial, that's really what you're doing. We have accepted the privilege of representing people, and we get to tell their story. Yeah. And the great thing is like, we get to write it for them too, right? So we get to experience with them, we get to write it, and we get to tell it. And when you're reading books to children, you really get into this idea, like, I need to make you feel the words on this page. When you're advocating in front of the jury, I need to get them to feel what this person experienced. Yeah. And I can do it in so many ways. So and you guys, so trial school, sign up for trial school, because we do tons of free advocacy training and all of that stuff on there. I'm trying to think of good books for storytelling.
The trial school is good. I've done that. That's really helpful, especially when they videotape you when you're telling your story. And, you know, with me, I wave my hands all around.
Yeah.
I have a piece of advice for you though. On the book thing. This is a really neat experience I just went through. My boys are 15 and 17, so I'm transitioning their rooms from little boy rooms to big boy rooms. And I've kept all of their childhood books, many of which are my childhood books. And it's so cool to sit there and open them up now and start to read the books to them now, even though they're little kid books. They remember them. They remember my tone of voice. They remember my inflection. And so, like, don't let the pigeon drive the bus. They're still laughing about it. So anybody that's listening, save those childhood books because it's so cool when they're older.
Yeah. Whitney has one that, what was that Dr. Seuss book? You're not my mother. You're not my mother. You're a snuff. You're a snuff. And I'd had this over the top dramatic, you're not my mother, get real.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so fun. You know, those are the memories you make and you think your kids don't remember. And believe me, for all of you women who are killing yourself to be super moms, they actually don't remember a lot of the detail. They actually don't remember that you didn't go to sleep until 3 o'clock in the morning doing for something for them one time. So stop killing yourself and maybe enjoy those smaller moments as they come, because they do not have a checklist that they're going, okay, my bed was made every day. I had Pottery Barn. I had da, 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 da. She was an A+ mom. No, they remember the voice you used when you said, you're not my mother.
That's
right. So, exactly.
I tell you, this has been such a treat for me to spend some more time with you, Julia Metz. And I know I will see you. We will all see you at some of these lawyer meetings. She is a preeminent trial lawyer, but she also teaches other trial lawyers how to be trial lawyers. And that's the background on this amazing person that we shared everything else about today, but she is a lawyer. She has a job. So thank you for coming with us. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Betsy. And thank you all of our listeners again for another episode of the EmPower Hour, brought to you by the EmPower Plant by Basic Brooks Law Offices. And you can reach out to us to get the contact information for Julia Metz. She is with the trial school. She is also associated with the Levin Papantonio law firm that we also do a lot of business with, great firm in Northwest Florida, Pensacola. So thank you again. Thank you all of our watchers and listeners, and thank you for our panel members. We will see you next week at 4:30 Thursday, Facebook Live on the EmPower.